very much. It is a bit of an awesome challenge to talk to you about virtually anything. I mean, I started out, I was asked to deal with some of the long-term trends or medium-term trends that would affect your business or that would be really important in terms of the framework of finance and business. And then, of course, the bottom fell out, and I thought, if all I do is talk about the medium term, it would be a bit like living on a block where all the houses were on fire, and I called a meeting to talk about zoning 10 years from now. On the other hand, the zoning will still be important to that neighborhood, so I think the idea of focusing on some of the things that are still going to happen, I believe that makes sense. So what I would like to do is basically start with a bit of an overview of the financial crisis that we're in now, and then go to some of the longer-term trends. Normally, I would talk only a short period of time, and that's always my preference. But I remember seeing someone who said that, and he began by saying, "I only speak for 15 minutes." And then he got going. And he kept going and going and going. I don't know if you remember those pictures of Latin American dictators in the 1960s that talked 6 or 7 hours when they gave a speech. So he just kind of lost himself, and in the middle of his talk, somebody in the audience got up and started to walk out. And the speaker, who was obviously taken with himself, just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that in the middle of his talk somebody was rude enough just to get up and walk out. So the speaker stopped what he was saying, and he pointed at the fellow and he said, "Excuse me, sir." Of course, the fellow turned around. The speaker said, "Where are you going?" And the guy looked at him and said, "I'm going to get a haircut." Well, the speaker said, "You're going to get a haircut? Why didn't you get a haircut before you came?" The fellow looked at him and said, "I didn't need one before I came." So I'm going to ask for a little indulgence because I do have a lot to go through. And I think I know who you are and that you digest stuff very, very fast, probably faster than I can speak. So I'm going to go through this stuff very fast. And I have a number of slides, and some of them I'm just going to skip over so that we can really get to the heart of the issue. Let me start with what I think is obvious, but you know, the more I think about it, maybe it's not. And that is that we have been through a number of financial crises over the last couple of decades. But I believe that the one we're in now is totally unprecedented in terms of its size, its complexity. I mean, just to take one example, I don't know how many of you remember Black Monday in the 1987 crash. It was a result of a lot of overexuberance in the previous year, but basically the United States and Germany were having a real spat about macroeconomic policy. A lot of it had to do with interest rates. Secretary of the Treasury Baker made a threat that we would do something with our currency if the Germans didn't reduce their interest rates. Of course, the market was very tender, but that one event set everything into a tailspin. Well, that wasn't such a complicated situation to get out of. Within a day, the U.S. and Germany realized that they had to make up. Congress met, decided to do something about taxes in the budget. In other words, it was nothing approaching the complexity of the situation we face today. And I could go down all of these and make a similar sort of case. Different causes, but relative to what we face now, very simple. I mean, some of the reasons that we're in this fix, and I'm sure there are many of them, but you know, we've been in a period where there has been very low inflation. That was a result of a lot of liquidity in the market. That was also a result of 3 billion people coming into the world economy after the fall of the Berlin Wall and producing goods at very low prices. We didn't have much inflation. Everybody was chasing yield. There was a massive amount of innovation, very complex securities, lack of transparency, and I'm not even saying intentionally. They were just so awfully complex. And then an attitude which is really the most dangerous attitude you can ever have in the world of finance, as all of you know, is the sense that it's different this time around. Chairman Greenspan would say he's not worried because this time around the risk is being distributed so widely that we're not vulnerable in the way that we were before. Now, before I come to the rescue plan, I just want to say that, you know, just recall we are in a very, very difficult situation. We've had multiple bailouts. Each one has led to another and a bigger one. There's a total flight to safety, and there's literally no trust in the market. And that one thing, I don't have to tell you, no trust, that's the kiss of death, because our entire financial system relies on trust among institutions. And so I just come to the final thing, which is, I think all of this will not get in the way of a smaller world in which countries are much more integrated, in which what one country does has an impact on the other, in which issues like financial disturbances are immediately transmitted. Trade, investment, all of these things are going to become increasingly important and increasingly complex. And to end where I started, the financial problems that we have today may in fact accelerate all this, because I have a prediction to make. And that is that what looks like now like a very domestic problem for us, a bailout of our mortgage securities in financial institutions, is going to become a major global issue. And we are already seeing lots of calls for global regulation. I know this is going to sound far-fetched to you, but I would not be surprised 10 years from now we will see the emergence of something that looks like a global central bank. Because all of these issues, they can't be handled just with countries talking to each other. The notion of coordinating sounds nice, but coordinating is not the same as making decisions. So I think that what's happening today will actually create problems on a global scale that are acute enough so that the world does make another step towards a much more global society.